Hello BookTube, this is Weekly Reads, and what a roller coaster reading week I've had. I started the reading week with the high expectations that I was going to have two successful Bell redemptions of Blue Angel by Francine Prose and Wonderland by Stacey D. Erasmo. And then I was going to finally get around to reading The Answers by Catherine Lacey. But I was wrong. So I started with Blue Angel, which is about a creative writing professor at a small New England liberal arts college who was accused of sexually harassing one of his students. I'd wanted to read this book for 20 years. I read a review of it when I was 16 or 17 and finally got around to picking it up and adding it to my collection in 2020, about 20 years after it was first published. And I read it and I bailed on it. At the time, because I didn't care for the flippant way Prose was handling the looming sexual harassment accusation. So I waited about a year and a half to come back to it, and I was hoping I would have a Bell redemption and I would finish it, read it, complete it, and maybe enjoy it, or just have the accomplishment that I read something that I've wanted to read forever. But I bailed on it again. I did make it a little bit further this time than last time, but my concerns are still there. That and expanded. I think there are a lot of situations where Prose is a bit flippant with her subject matter. I mean, and yes, Blue Angel is a satire of the university in the late 20th and early 21st century, and stereotype that's still with us today. And I understood that, but I don't really do stereotypes, or not stereotypes, satire all that well. And so the sort of exaggerated, sort of type characters just didn't really do it for me. And I think fundamentally there's a point where we're told Angela Argo's work is so good, so naturally good, that Swinson throws caution to the wind, even though he should know he's opening himself up, whether he intends to or not. But what the reader is told isn't necessarily what is shown. The snippets of Angela's novel, it's not that good. It's kind of trash. So it just, and it's just so much. And I wasn't loving it. It was more like an intellectual thing, and I decided to bail. And I was rather deeply disappointed on that bail. So much so, in fact, that I decided not to even bother with a Bell redemption of Wonderland, which is about a fading rock star who seeks to restart her career by going on a tour of Europe. Which, the last time I tried to Bell redeem Wonderland, I did make it a little bit further, but it was also rather boring. So then I started on The Answers by Catherine Lacey. This is the story of a young woman who due to some weird medical condition that her doctors aren't finding, but which are racking up the medical bills plus some pseudoscience. The main character is deeply in debt. To sort of alleviate that debt, she takes on a rather weird and unusual job, being one of a series of girlfriends for a wealthy young man who wants each of his girlfriends to represent a fraction of a personality or something. I read the first few pages and the writing was just atrocious. It was just bad. So I bailed really quickly on that. So that was all on Saturday. And my Saturday was, for reading wise, pretty shot and depressing. But I decided to read something on my Kindle. I do subscribe to Kindle Unlimited, even though I don't really use it at all. But I do have a number of books on Kindle Unlimited, and I decided to, because I had some extra time to pick something and see if maybe I liked it. And so I decided to read Ride by Nellie Kirstin. It's a gay romance featuring a young man named Kit who is going to UCLA after a pretty bad breakup with his first boyfriend because he lives in Lima Junction, Ohio. While he's during his freshman year of UCLA, his dad gets him a job at a BMX store where he meets aspiring BMX biker named Bentley, who the previous year was, I think, a running back or a wide receiver. He was something on the UCLA's Bruins football team as well as on the track and field team. And so they kind of meet and they have a cutesy sort of flirtatious relationship. Bentley is straight or straight identifying when he first meets Kit, but gradually he sort of recognizes he's has some same-sex attractions, particularly towards Kit, and eventually determines that he's bisexual, even though I'm not entirely sure whether or not it's addressed in the novel. So if you notice my usage of the word Lima, or the town Lima, that's because originally Ride was Glee fanfiction. And I actually read it a decade or more ago. I had a period where I was rather interested in fanfiction. Sometimes the fanfics were significantly better than their source material, and sometimes not. And I think part of my problem with Ride, the cleaned up version, the not fanfiction version, is that there's a little too much of the fanfic left that makes that Kirstin really didn't need to add to the not fanfic version. So in the fanfic version, Kurt moves to Long Beach, California, because his father has a job opportunity that it would be stupid for him to pass up. So he moves, and Bert's friend is a figure in BMX, so he has a BMX shop, and through that relationship, Kurt basically has a summer job. And of course, Blaine is a bit more established BMX racer, although or not technically a racer, and be a rider, because I mean in BMX it's not racing, it's doing stunts or tricks. But anyway, and that kind of works. But in the not fanfic version, it's a bit extraneous because Kit's roommate is one of Bentley's best friends. So, I mean, that's the perfect way for them to meet, rather than this credulity pushing getting a job at a BMX store because his father knows the owner, and even said father coming out to UCLA too for pretty much the same reason that Kurt's father came in the original. It was a bit of a mess. I mean, the writing's so cutesy, and you do want to, I think, read it to find out what happens, but the quality is so bad that it's going to take either skimming or a lot of starts and stops to get there, and I didn't want to. So my Saturday reading was pretty atrocious. So then on Sunday, I decided to read the book that I had set for to read if I did have a Bellapalooza on Saturday. And so I decided to, so I read South of Freedom by Ellis L. Baumgartner. This is a history of Mexico and the United States in the years before, during, and after the Mexican Civil War, the American Civil War, and the French invasion and the Second Mexican Empire under Maximilian. This is a really good book. I really enjoyed it. Baumgartner looks at essentially how both countries dealt with slavery during their early years, how Mexico's relationship with slavery was always more confrontational, more oppositional, while the United States was more accommodationist. I mean, although, yes, the North gradually became more and more abolitionist and oppositional towards slavery as the decades moved on, but governmentally, politically, I mean, it was very much accommodationist. The American government, or the United States government, went out of its way to accommodate Southern slaveholders. While in Mexico, there were the intent to gradually emancipate slaves, as well as offering freedom for those North American slaves who kind of made it to Florida during the Spanish colonial period, as well as Mexico itself. And how once Texas sort of formed a kind of sort of a problem for Mexico in that most of the Texians, most of the Anglos who came to Texas to settle were slaveholders. And so while Mexico had a more oppositional attitude towards slavery, they kind of had to, accommodate, or how do you confront this fact that the settlers are bringing their slaves with them? And how do you handle that, particularly when these settlers routinely break the law? And once Texas rebelled and broke away from Mexico, Mexico outlawed slavery wholesale and became increasingly a abolitionist state, to where if runaway slaves made it to Mexico, they were free and could claim citizenship. And there were a lot of stories about such runaways, and how, particularly after the Mexican-American War, how a number of successful runaways who made it to Mexico were protected not only by the Mexican military and also by civil authorities, but also by ordinary Mexicans. And those were some of the really interesting stories in the book. And it was really fascinating. I really enjoyed it. And there's so much more to this book, though. I highly, highly recommend it if you haven't read South to Freedom. It's really good. So I read South to Freedom Sunday and into Monday. And I finished it on Monday, largely due to the fact that there was a storm that came through my area. There were a number of tornadoes associated with this storm. Fortunately, those tornadoes were south and east of where I live, but that did not mean that I did not lose power. And I actually lost power. My apartment lost power twice. Once shortly after I started reading, and then that lasted for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then a second power outage that lasted about 40 minutes, 30-40 minutes, about an hour after power had been restored the first time. So I already the supper we had was already made, so I didn't have to cook anything. And that gave me the time to finish off South to Freedom on Friday. I mean, not Friday, Monday. So on Tuesday, I decided to read a biography of Chancellor Angela Merkel. And so I decided to read The Chancellor by Marton. Unfortunately, Sunday was a fairly bad day. My mom is having another round of physical therapy, and so she had to be admitted for that. And the physical therapist who came out to sort of admit her came out during my reading period, so that kind of disrupted things. And then my brother called, and that disrupted things further, and I was having a fairly bad day on Tuesday anyway, and so I ended up bailing on this, although I will be coming back to this. And I was tempted to come back on Wednesday, but I decided to read some National Geographics to see if I wanted to keep them, or if I wanted to put them in a yard sale, because my brother is having a yard sale, and also had to deal with a bit of my brother's drama. Anyway, so I will come back to The Chancellor at some point, just not entirely sure when. What I read of it, though, I quite liked, although I do wish some of the footnotes didn't mention Katie Martin's own life. So, I was well in the dumps on coming out of Wednesday. So on Thursday, I decided to read Octopus by Richard Schweid. This is one of the reaction animal series of books that look at a different animal, and it looks at their biology, aspects of their biology, also the history of their study, their commercial value, as well as sort of the animal in human culture and human history. And so this book, focusing on the octopus, I loved it. So far I've read 4 of these books and I've loved all of them. So this one looks at the octopus's body, their biology, and the history of their study. Also, it looks at the study of the octopus brain, of their mind, of exactly how intelligent octopuses are and in what ways are they intelligent. And then it looks at hunting and farming octopuses, which is, I didn't know, there is an attempt to aquaculture octopuses, which for the common octopus is incredibly difficult to do. But for the Mexican variety, the Octopus Maya, I think it's the Mayan octopus, is actually a lot easier to aquaculture them. and then also octopuses as food, which was a fairly interesting chapter. And then the iconography of the octopus in human culture, which was fascinating chapter 2. And then it ended with keeping octopuses, not only in public aquariums and in research, but also as pets. And that was a fairly interesting chapter. So I really enjoyed Octopus, and I'm looking forward to more of the Reaction Animal series. So on Friday, today, I decided to read some manga, because I've been meaning to read some manga for a while, and so I decided to read the 2 volumes of the 7 Deadly Sins that I haven't gotten to recently. I mean, I've read the first 6 or 7 volumes of the 7 Deadly Sins, but I've only collected the first 4 volumes. So I read volumes 3 and 4 by Nakaba Suzuki. So the 7 Deadly Sins is, this is volume 3 and this is volume 4, about a young woman named Princess Elizabeth, whose father the king has been overthrown by the Holy Knights, an elite order of the knighthood who have superpowers. To stop the Holy Knights and their tyranny of the people, Elizabeth goes in search of the 7 Deadly Sins, a rival order of knighthood who were implicated in an attempt to overthrow the kingdom 10 years previously. In the first volume, she meets the leader of the 7 Deadly Sins, Meliodas, who is the sin of wrath. And together they go in search of the other 7 Deadly Sins. In the first volume, they find Diane, a giantess. And then in the second volume, they go in search of Ban, the sin of greed. And then in volume 3, they wrap up finding Ban, and then go in search of King, another member of the 7 Deadly Sins. And then that story is wrapped up in volume 4, and the beginning of the next story arc sort of goes from there. I really enjoyed reading these again. The 7 Deadly Sins is one of my favorite volumes or manga series. So yeah, I'm going to show you some pictures that I really, or image that I quite liked, that I think so, like here. And there's one really amazing 2-page spread that I really, really liked. Oh yeah. And that is just an amazing image, I think. So yeah, I really enjoyed reading these 2 volumes, and I'm looking forward to collecting the entire series later on. So that's what I read this week. A roller coaster. So this coming reading week, I'm in a bit of a bind for what I should read. So I'm thinking of reading, firstly, over the weekend, The 5 Wounds by Kirstin Valdez Quade. This is a novelization of one of her short stories, also called The 5 Wounds. It's about a 30-something unemployed man from a small New Mexican town who is participating in a passion play. He's basically going to be crucified as part of a Easter religious festival. During this Passion Week, he has to take care of his teenage daughter who is pregnant, as well as his mother, his grandmother, and other relatives and other members of the community. So I quite liked the short story version of The Five Wounds, and I'm quite looking forward to reading this. So I'll be reading that this weekend. And then I'm also thinking of reading A Visit from the Goon Squad by Jennifer Egan, which is a book I picked up last year. It's a novel in short stories about the music industry. I'm looking forward to checking out. And if that doesn't work, I might possibly read Strongmen by Ruth Ben-Ghiat. This is a history of various 20th century strongmen. Or I could just finish up the reaction animal books that I haven't read yet. And that would be Owl by Desmond Morris and Spider by Katarzyna and Sergiusz Michalski. So that's my reading plan for next week. So as far as videos are concerned next week, I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to be doing on Monday. Maybe a tag, maybe something else, and on Tuesday I'll aim to do a tag too. On Wednesday I have my Q&A video to do, and so if you would like to ask me questions, I'll leave a link to my Q&A call in the show notes. There's still a few days left, because the cutoff is pretty much going to be about Wednesday morning Central Time, because I'll basically do what I do when I do tag videos, which is I'll pull up, like have it on the comments on my screen, my computer, and I will read the questions off from there. So far I've got 4 questions, 4 commenters have left questions, and 2 of them are quite the barrage, so I should be able to do a good sized video. And then on Thursday, as it's the last day of March, I've got my book haul to do, and it's immense. It's right there. It is immense. But I'm going to have quite a bit of fun talking about all of the books I picked up in March, although maybe not as much fun putting them in my catalog or putting them on my bookshelves. But anyway, and then on Friday I will do weekly reads and also announce my at least the first week of April reading project. So anyway, BookTube. That's all I've got for this week. I'm going to go ahead and sign off for now. Thank you. Have a great evening and weekend, and I will see you hopefully on Monday. So until then, BookTube, thank you and stay safe.